Title: 6 Disturbing Horror Stories in the Woods, Real Encounters Compilation. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. The story begins. Story 1. The night something walked around my tent. I want to start by saying I have always been comfortable in the woods. I grew up camping with my dad, hiking with friends, and spending long weekends in state parks. I don't scare easily, and I never believed in anything paranormal. What happened that night didn't change my beliefs. It just made me realize that not everything in the woods wants to stay unseen. This happened in late October of 2019. I had taken a solo camping trip in the Appalachian region of North Carolina. I wanted the quiet. I had been dealing with a lot: job stress, lack of sleep, the usual things. The woods always calmed me down. I picked a spot about 3 miles off the main trail, a place not many people go anymore. It was late in the season, so I did not expect to run into many hikers. I set up camp near a clearing where the trees opened just enough to see the sky. It was already late afternoon, and by the time I had a fire going, the woods were quiet. Completely quiet. No birds, no insects, just wind moving through the leaves. I noticed it, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Around 9 p.m., I turned in for the night. I zipped myself inside the tent, listened to the soft crackle of the fire dying out, and eventually fell asleep. I don't know what time I woke up, but the first thing I registered was the sound of leaves being stepped on. Not blown by wind, stepped on. Slow, deliberate, heavy. I opened my eyes, fully awake instantly. The steps were moving around my tent in a slow circle. Whatever it wasn't rushing. It wasn't startled. It was aware of me. I didn't move. I just listened. I wanted to tell myself it was a deer, but deer don't walk like that. And they don't drag their feet. And they definitely don't move slowly around something like they're studying it. My heart was jumping in my chest, but I kept still. I knew unzipping the tent and shining a light would either scare it or provoke it, and I didn't like either possibility. For almost 10 minutes, it circled. The footsteps would vanish for a few seconds, and I'd think it had left, only for the sound to start again on the other side of the tent. I could hear breathing too. Or maybe that was my own, I honestly don't know. I considered grabbing my phone, but I was afraid any noise would give me away more than I already was. Then it stopped. Right outside the tent. I could hear it standing there. I could feel the stillness of the air, like the whole forest was holding its breath. I waited. I don't know how long. It could have been 1 minute, could have been 15. Then slowly the steps moved away. Not crashing into the woods. Just leaving. I didn't sleep after that. When the sky finally started to lighten, I got up and stepped outside. The forest felt normal again. Birds were making noise. The air felt lighter. But the ground around my tent told the story. There were footprints circling the entire tent, deep prints, pressed into the soft dirt. Too large to be a human, too narrow to be a bear. Each step landed with weight, deliberate and slow. And they led back into the trees, toward a part of the forest where the undergrowth was thick and dark. A place I had no intention of going. I packed up and left within 10 minutes. I don't tell this story to sound dramatic. I don't claim I saw something supernatural. All I know is something walked around my tent that night, watching me, thinking about me, and choosing not to break the thin wall of nylon between us. I never camped alone again. Story 2. The cabin with the lights still on. I grew up in northern Minnesota, near miles of forest trails and lakes that most people never see unless they've lived there long enough. Hunters, loggers, fishermen were used to being alone in the woods. And when you spend enough time out there, you learn how to tell the difference between something normal and something that just feels wrong. This happened in 2004. I was 19, living back home for the year to save money. My cousin and I used to go hiking and fishing at this lake about 2 hours from town. The trail was old logging road mostly, and almost no one used it anymore. The forest had grown in thick around it, and it felt isolated in a way that was peaceful during the day and unsettling at night. We had been hiking for about an hour when we came across something neither of us knew was out there. It was a cabin. Not a collapsing, overgrown ruin, but a standing cabin with intact walls, a roof, and the windows still covered with old storm shutters. There was no path leading to it, no driveway, no mailbox. It wasn't marked on any map either. The first thing that bothered us wasn't the cabin itself, it was the feeling of the clearing around it. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. No birds. No wind. No movement. Just stillness. My cousin joked, "Looks abandoned," and walked closer. I stayed back. The cabin door was slightly cracked open, like someone had closed it once and time had slowly pushed it back. The wood around the frame was weathered, but the door itself was surprisingly solid. There were no footprints in the dirt, no sign of life, no tire marks. My cousin pushed the door. It didn't creak. It just swung open smoothly, like it had been opened yesterday. Inside, everything was still there. A table with chairs, an old metal bed frame, blankets folded at the end, plates stacked neatly in a cabinet, and a lantern hanging by the window. It was like someone had left to get water and never came back. There was dust, but not as much as there should have been. My cousin walked around like it was no big deal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were trespassing. Not legally, but in the way where you can tell someone once cared about this place. And maybe still did. I told him we should leave. He said we'd just look for a minute and then go. That's when he stopped moving. "Hey," he said quietly, "do you smell that?" I did. It was wood smoke. Not faint. Not old. Fresh. Like someone had just built a fire, or was about to. We both backed up toward the doorway. Neither of us talked. And as we stepped outside, we heard something behind the cabin. Not footsteps, but something moving. Slow, heavy, dragging. It didn't sound like a deer. It didn't sound like a bear either. It sounded like someone pulling something across the ground. My cousin whispered, "We need to go." We didn't run at first. We walked fast. Then the dragging sound got louder. Closer. Following. Not rushing, just keeping pace. That was somehow worse. When we finally broke into a sprint, the woods didn't feel empty anymore. It felt crowded. Like the trees themselves were too close. Like something was following just out of sight. We didn't stop running until we reached the truck. Even then, we didn't talk. We just got inside and left. We didn't go back for months. When we did, in early spring, we expected the cabin to still be there. It wasn't. There was nothing in the clearing. No cabin. No foundation. No wood. No boards. No nails. Just grass and trees, undisturbed like nothing had ever been built there. But the ground where we remembered the cabin being was blackened, like it had been burned. Not recently, but years ago. Our footprints from the first time were gone. But something else remained. A single rusted lantern hanging from a low branch. The same kind we saw inside. Neither of us took it. Neither of us spoke on the drive home. Some places in the woods are forgotten for a reason. Some places are abandoned on purpose. And some places look like they're waiting for someone. We didn't go back again. Story 3. The Woman on the Logging Road. This happened in 2017 in northern Washington. I used to work as a survey assistant for a forestry contractor. Most of our jobs involved walking old logging roads, marking tree lines, and noting regrowth conditions. It wasn't glamorous work, but I liked being outdoors and away from crowds. One area we surveyed was at least 40 minutes from the nearest paved road. The logging roads there were old, some just gravel spines covered in moss, some barely paths anymore. It was quiet country. You'd hear wind, a few birds, maybe distant running water. Nothing else. On this particular day, it was just me and my coworker, Mason. We split up to cover more ground, standard procedure. You walk your section, take notes, flag where needed, and meet back at the truck by a certain time. We both had radios, but the signal came and went depending on the terrain. My path was easy at first. Slight incline, open views between the trees. The air felt normal, just the usual isolation you get used to out there. About 20 minutes in, I noticed something that didn't fit. A blue jacket lying on the side of the road. Not torn, not weather-beaten, just sitting there. I walked closer and saw it was folded, almost neatly, like someone had taken it off and placed it down with intention. There were pine needles on it, but they hadn't sunk in, meaning it hadn't been there long. I radioed Mason to ask if anyone else was working our grid that day. He said no, just us. I didn't touch the jacket. I just marked the spot like we were supposed to when we found items left behind, and kept going. Maybe 10 minutes later, I saw someone. A woman, standing in the middle of the logging road, facing away from me. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. No backpack, no tools, no supplies. Her hair hung down her back and she was completely still, not shifting her weight, not turning her head, not doing anything. Just standing there. I stopped walking. Something felt wrong immediately. Not fear, just that internal don't step forward signal that kicks in before your brain has time to reason. I called out, "Hey, do you need help?" No reaction. I tried again, louder. Nothing. I checked my radio. Static. I didn't want to get closer, but leaving without confirming she was okay didn't feel right either. She could be injured, but in shock. I know enough about wilderness survival to understand people don't always behave rationally when dehydrated or hypothermic. So I stepped forward slowly and said, "Are you hurt?" She moved. Not her head, not her arms, her shoulders. Just slightly, like she had shivered, but it was 68 degrees. No wind. I took one more step and she finally spoke. Quiet, but clear enough to hear. "Don't walk on the road." She didn't turn around when she said it. Just those words. I stopped. My brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe she was warning me about a sinkhole ahead. Maybe she didn't want to be approached. But something in her tone wasn't warning. It was instruction, like she was telling me a rule. I managed to say, "Do you want me to call for help?" She didn't respond. She didn't move. And suddenly, I realized that I hadn't heard anything since I spotted her. No birds, no insects, not even wind through the trees. Just silence. The kind that feels like pressure. I stepped backward, slowly, watching her the entire time. She never turned, never acknowledged me again, never moved from that exact spot. When I rounded a bend and could no longer see her, I ran. Not panicked, just fast enough to get distance. I reached a small ridge where the radio signal usually returned and called Mason. He didn't respond at first. When he finally did, he sounded irritated, like something had interrupted him. I told him about the woman. He said he hadn't seen anyone on his route and we needed to get back to the truck immediately. When we met at the truck, he asked me to point the direction. I did. He went quiet. "There's nothing up that road," he said. "It dead ends into a washed-out ravine. Has for years." We drove out fast. I don't know who she was. I don't know what she meant. I don't know why she was there. But when I think about her voice, I remember one thing. She didn't sound afraid. She sounded like someone used to saying the same thing, over and over again, to people who didn't always listen. Story 4. The footsteps outside the rest stop bathroom. This happened in 2021, when I was driving cross-country from Idaho to Michigan for work. I was traveling alone, and I had already been on the road for about 12 hours. I didn't like driving at night, but I was trying to make it as far as I could before stopping at a motel. Most of the highways out there cut straight through national forest land. Long dark stretches of road. No towns. No lights. Just trees, endless, silent trees. Around 11:30 p.m., I pulled into one of those small roadside rest stops. The kind with a couple of picnic tables, a vending machine, and a single bathroom building. Only one car was parked there, a dark sedan backed into the far corner, but I didn't see anyone in or around it. The air was cold when I stepped out, and the woods felt loudly quiet, like the silence was pressing in from every direction. I walked into the bathroom. It was one of those concrete block rooms with a single stall and a metal sink. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed faintly. I locked the door, used the bathroom, washed my hands, and splashed some water on my face to wake myself up. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Outside. Slow. Crunching the gravel. At first, I assumed someone else had just pulled in. But the footsteps didn't move past. They just came closer. Steady. Heavy. Unhurried. They stopped right outside the bathroom door. I froze. I waited, thinking maybe they were just standing there, waiting for me to finish. But then the handle moved. Not a light test, someone tried to open the door. I said, "Someone's in here." Loud enough to sound confident, even though my voice shook. The handle stopped. There was silence for a moment. Then the footsteps moved, but not away. They moved to the side of the building. Slow, deliberate, like whoever it was standing right outside the wall, listening. The bathroom was a rectangle, so I could hear when they moved along the outer wall to the back side of the building. Their footsteps were careful, not wandering, like they were tracking my position inside. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just listened. The footsteps stayed behind the building for a long time, long enough that the silence felt worse than the movement. Then something else happened. The vending machine outside, the one near the entrance, beeped. Not coins. Not buttons. Just one electronic beep, like someone had pressed and held a selection button. There is no reason for someone to do that. The footsteps returned to the front of the bathroom. The door handle turned again, harder this time, like it was being tested for weakness. The only thing between me and whoever was out there was a thin metal lock that could be forced with one good hit. I knew I had two choices. Stay and wait for them to get inside, or get out while I still had the chance. So I got ready. I gripped my keys in my fist, points out like self-defense instructors teach. I unlocked the door, and in one motion, I threw the door open and ran. I didn't look at their face. I didn't look at their clothes. I didn't look at anything except my car. I heard footsteps behind me. Chasing. I reached my car, unlocked it, got inside, slammed the door, and hit the lock button twice. I started the engine and reversed hard, gravel spitting under the tires. As I pulled out, my headlights swept the parking lot. There was no one. But that car, the dark sedan I saw earlier, was now parked directly facing the bathroom, engine running, headlights off. Whoever it was had moved it while I was inside. I didn't wait to see if they followed. I drove until I reached the next well-lit town and stopped only at a crowded gas station. I sat in the car for a long time before I could breathe normally again. I never found out who that person was, or what they wanted. But I do know one thing. They didn't walk up to the bathroom by accident. They were waiting for someone alone, someone tired, someone who wouldn't be missed right away. Now, when I drive at night, I don't stop, no matter how tired I am. Some places are quiet for a reason. Story 5. When someone knows your name in the woods. In 2013, I worked for a conservation program in Oregon that involved clearing trail routes and restoring old hiking paths. Most days, the work was peaceful. Quiet forests, long walks, and the kind of alone time that makes you feel small in a good way. One afternoon, we were assigned to survey a section of trail that hadn't been used for years. It was deep in the forest, not near any campsites, and no public access roads led to it anymore. The trail was overgrown, barely recognizable, and the deeper we walked, the thicker the forest became. There were 4 of us, me, my supervisor Mark, and 2 volunteers. We spread out slightly along the slope the way we usually did, but we always kept each other in sight. At least, that was the plan. About an hour in, the trees got dense enough that visibility dropped. You could still hear each other, but you couldn't necessarily see everyone. That wasn't unusual. We called out every few minutes to confirm we were all still nearby. At one point, one of the volunteers, a guy named Eric, said he wanted to go a bit off the trail to check something. Mark told him to stay within voice range and call back every minute. Eric called out once. Then again a minute later. Then silence. We tried calling his name. No response. At first, we assumed he had gone downhill and couldn't hear us clearly. So we spread out slightly and kept calling. The forest swallowed our voices. It didn't echo. It just absorbed sound. After about 10 minutes of searching, we regrouped. Mark told us not to panic. People get turned around in the woods all the time. We needed to slow down, listen, and call out calmly. So we did. We called, "Eric." That's when we heard it. Someone very far away called back, "Over here." But the voice didn't sound like Eric. Not exactly wrong, just off. Like someone trying to match his tone, his pitch, but flattening it as if repeating something heard, not spoken. Mark froze. He whispered, That didn't come from the direction Eric went. We listened again. Silence. Then louder. Help. Over here. Same tone. Same voice. But too far. Too controlled. Not panicked. Not tired. Just repeating. The woods were quiet again. No birds. No insects. Nothing. Mark said quietly, "We're leaving. Now." We didn't argue. We walked back the way we came, staying close, no one speaking. The forest felt wrong. Like eyes were on us. Like someone was watching us move. About half a mile back, we finally heard real shouting. This time it was frantic, loud, breathless. It was Eric. We found him standing in the middle of the trail ahead of us, shaking, pale, sweating. He looked like he had run miles. He kept saying, "Don't go down there. Don't go where that voice is." When he caught his breath, he told us what happened. He had followed what he thought was part of the trail, but it dead-ended in thick brush. While trying to turn back, he heard someone call his name from deeper in the forest. Not once. Not urgently. Just softly. Like it already knew he was there. At first, he assumed one of us was messing with him. But the voice kept repeating his name, same tone, same pacing, same distance, no matter how far he moved. Then it started saying, "Come here. Come down. Over here." Not yelling, just speaking. Too calm. That's when he realized it always sounded the same. No strain. No fatigue. No change in direction. Like the source never moved. He said it felt like something was trying to lead him somewhere. He didn't follow it. He ran. We reported the incident. Search and rescue went back to check the area later. They found no footprints besides ours. No campsites. No tire tracks. No animals large enough to mimic human speech. Nothing. They told us sound does strange things in dense woods, echoes, acoustics, wind, temperature layers. They said fear can distort memory. Maybe that's true. But I know what we heard. And I know what he heard. There are places in the woods where your name should not be known. Places where hearing your own voice repeated back to you is not an accident. Since that day, I don't go off trail. Not even a few steps. Some things in the woods don't chase you. They wait. Story 6. The Man in the Tree Line. In 2018, I lived in Colorado and spent a lot of weekends hiking alone. I liked being off the grid, away from noise, away from people. The mountains were where I felt most centered. I never carried headphones out there. I always preferred listening to the natural silence. One Sunday morning in late September, I drove out to a trail I'd never tried before. It wasn't popular, no marked parking lot, no restrooms, no campgrounds. Just a small dirt turnoff and a faint path leading into the trees. I saw only one other vehicle there when I arrived, an old red pickup with faded paint. No one was in it, and I assumed the owner was somewhere already on the trail. It was cold but sunny. The kind of fall morning where the air feels sharper than usual. I hiked for about an hour, enjoying the quiet. No noise except wind in the trees. The trail eventually opened into a large meadow, knee-high grass, scattered pines, and the mountains visible in the distance. That's when I noticed something. On the far side of the meadow, right where the tree line began again, someone was standing there. At first, I thought it was the pickup truck owner. But the person wasn't moving at all. They were just standing at the edge of the trees, facing me. They were too far away to see any detail. Just a shape. A person. So, I didn't want to stare, so I kept walking, acting like I hadn't seen them. But as I continued down the trail, I kept glancing back. They hadn't moved. Not an inch. I walked into the next section of woods. The path curved slightly, and the meadow went out of view. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. But not running. Just walking. But matching my pace. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I waited. The woods should have been noisy, birds, wind, but there was nothing. Just stillness. I turned around slowly. No one was there. But I knew, the same way you know when someone is staring at you, I wasn't alone. I kept walking. The trail eventually turned toward a small creek. I stepped down the bank to fill my water bottle. While crouched, I felt the distinct sensation of being watched. I looked across the creek. There he was. Closer now. standing between two pines, half in shadow, still facing me. Only this time, I could make out more detail. He was tall, thin, wearing dark clothing, no backpack, no hiking gear, nothing in his hands, just standing there, breathing evenly, watching. I forced myself to act normal. I didn't run. I didn't say anything. I just screwed the cap back onto my bottle, stood up and walked calmly back toward the trail. All the while, I could feel him watching. When I reached the trail, I didn't look back. I just walked. Not fast, I didn't want to look scared. Just steady. The footsteps returned. But now they were closer. Too close. That was when panic finally took over. I ran. My backpack slammed against my shoulders as my feet hit the dirt hard. Branches whipped past my face. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel him following. The trail wasn't marked well, and I almost missed the turn that led back toward the road. When I reached the parking area, I saw my car, and the red pickup, the one from earlier. Only now, the pickup's driver's door was open, and no one was around. I got in my car so fast I nearly left the keys on the roof. I locked the doors, started it, and began reversing. Just before I pulled out, I looked toward the tree line. He was there, standing at the edge of the forest. Same distance as before. Same stillness. Watching. No expression. No movement. Just presence. I drove away and didn't look in the mirror. I reported it to park services later with the vehicle's description. They told me others had seen someone fitting that appearance near lesser-known trailheads before, always watching, never approaching, never speaking. They said the same sentence to me 3 times. He knows the woods better than anyone else out there. No one knows if he lives out there full-time. No one has ever spoken to him. No one ever sees him up close. Just far enough. Just close enough. Just long enough to remember.